Legal journalist Karyn Maughan. Karyn, thank you very much for your time. Good to see you again. I guess, of course, the common issue amongst all of those who've made it to the list, we were speaking earlier, is that all seem to have suffered in the NPA in their quest not to be politically influenced. Amongst them, Andrea Johnson, who was removed from her position previously.
And she spoke openly about that, Griselda, during her interview. Now, she was the acting head of the Priority Crimes Litigation Unit in late 2015, early 2016, when she was removed by then NDPP Shaun Abrahams. Now, that unit will not be something that the public hasn't heard of. They were the unit responsible for the aborted fraud prosecution of Finance Minister at the time, Pravin Gordhan. They were also, involved in the prosecution of Anwar Dramat. That case subsequently withdrawn. In the cases of Johan Boyson for racketeering, the former KZN Hawks boss, he's challenging those racketeering cases in court. And she actually referenced this and said that she believed quite categorically that her removal was tied to the fact, quote unquote, that if I was there, those cases would not have gone ahead. So she has come forth very much out and said that she believed her removal was linked to that. We also know that Advocate Mhlotswa, who is also on the short list, was removed as the acting KZN NDPP in 2012, at the same time when he refused on his evidence or interview to the panel to give in to Nonkobo Jiba, who was then the acting head of the NPA, when she said that charges against some of the very politically influential ANC members involved in that case needed to be removed. He was subsequently needed to be withdrawn. He was subsequently removed from that position, replaced by Moiponi Noko, who we saw not faring very well in these interviews at all, and then Noko subsequently withdrew the charges. So the kind of choices that this panel has made, with the candidates of people that they've chosen, is sending a clear message about being seen to state that you're independent. There needs to be a proven record of doing that. And crucially, none of the people involved or on the shortlist, unlike, unfortunately, Advocate Chauke and Silas Ramahite, have been visibly involved in cases that are politically questionable and that have subsequently come apart at the seams under legal scrutiny.
Well, Karyn, I want to talk about that, about those who did not make the list. For example, Silas Ramahite and Andrew Chauke. They did not make that list. Could it be perhaps because they didn't seem to play open cards about the clear factions within the National Prosecuting Authority?
I think that is such a valuable point, Griselda. I think this panel wanted people who were coming in and saying, we have problems as the NPA, we are aware of this. And certainly the individuals within the organization who came forward and said, look, like Andrea Johnson, who were very open about the fact that this is an organization in crisis. She was asked whether it was paralyzed. She said, look, it's not at that stage yet, but there are clear difficulties. And she was very, very honest and upfront about addressing those issues. We saw that the panel was particularly not happy with Silas Ramahite for not playing open cards with it. I think it was Terence Nombembe, the Auditor General, saying, you've really robbed us of an opportunity to get insight into the NPA and what's gone wrong. Now, of course, it's a double-edged sword for people like Silas Ramahite and Andrew Chauke. They were very much embroiled in the kind of dramas and problems that the NPA is facing. And they may have well felt that, admitting to complicity or admitting to awareness of it would amount to a certain level of liability on their part. But the risk that they faced, and which is obviously not paid off for them, is that the panel doesn't believe that they're actively aware or engaging with the true profound problems that the NPA has at this stage. And they want people who will actually admit there's an issue and take it on.
I see some people touting some favourites at this point, but of course it's all up to the president. Clearly, the person who is chosen for this position has a huge task of getting the public to really start having confidence once again in the work of the National Prosecuting Authority, Karyn. Let's talk about what this person and how perhaps they'll be able to do that, notwithstanding, of course, what we've seen over the past couple of years, issues of political interference and a host of other things, including factionalism, things that the candidates themselves have spoken about.
You know, it's not just about the NDPP. It's about the leadership of this country actually actively showing that it respects the independence of the NDPP, and not, as we've seen, whether it was in the presidency, allegedly, of Thabo Mbeki or President Zuma, that there seems to be undercover political influences around really key prosecutorial decisions. And we need leadership in this country that's going to support the NPA and actually take a hands-off approach to its functioning. I mean, that was one of the key questions that all the candidates was asked about, you know, if there were overtures by the Minister of Justice, for example, to intervene or interfere in the duties of the NDPP, what would they do? And that question is so telling. But for the NDPP, I mean, they're walking into an NPA that is severely underfunded. We know they have a massive budget problem. We know that they have 244 vacancies of key prosecutorial positions that they have been unable to fill because of budgetary constraints. They need to show the public that they are serious when they say we will act with without fear and favor. And how they do that, Griselda, is to actually take on cases involving people that are in spheres of power at the moment, not on the outside, not politically marginalized, but people who are very seriously implicated in the kind of evidence that we've seen coming out of the state capture inquiry, coming out of the Gupta leak emails, which have been accepted as provisionally as evidence by the Zondo Commission and are now available to the Hawks, and actually taking on those cases and prosecuting them.
Just very quickly, Karyn, just before I let you go, I'm going to put you on the spot there. Who do you think is likely at this point to get the top job? I mean, some like Shamila Batoh, for example, who are already on this list. Accusations of racism have been made against her.
Well, you know, there's a serious vetting process that goes on here. So for those names to get on the list, there would have had to be a vetting process in terms of determining who the best candidates are. We know that there is a big push by presidency to either have the head of SARS or the head of the NPA be a woman. I think the women candidates, particularly Shamila Batoh and Andrea Johnson, have proved themselves to be tough, resilient, ready to address questions. And I think both of those two are very strong candidates. But to be honest with you, Griselda, any one of the people on that list, I think, would make a very, very good NDPP. And many of them, as you rightly point out, have shown massive resilience and their own kind of defense to political interference. And I think that is pivotal.
Tiso Blackstar, legal journalist Karyn Maughan, thank you very much for your time. Well, we'll take, I think we'll link to weather right now. Let's take a short break and let's see what the weather has in store for us.